Is
you
that
have
a
some script from the
small
Lord of the
message
Rings.
from the watch, like a cry for help, like I'm trapped here, please come get me, so they stop torturing me?
Thank God that's not a Lamborghini collab. What does it say along there?
Probably that's what it says, yes. Not a Pirelli, not a Lambo.
Save me,
that's
and there's a gold
hilarious.
watch in it for you. Okay. Hey everyone, Ariel here with the aBlogtoWatch Weekly Podcast. I am joined by Ripley and David. Rick, once again, is away, so my apologies to the audience that listens live. Once again, we are not with you this week. We'd like to be. I just don't know how to do that technology. So if I learn about the button and Rick's away again, we will do live. But my apologies to the audience. We do love you, especially the participation during the show. But we will do the news service. First of all, Ripley and David, how are you guys? Ripley first.
I'm good. Just as usual in LA, it's getting warm. There's lots of watches, but not necessarily all new watches per se. But yeah, no complaints over here.
We are in the era of new watches. Maybe they're not new, but they have to be new watches. There's sort of new watches, but also no new watches.
Yeah, I mean, we're now at the point where, like, it's not just like that's a new colorway. I'm scratching my head sometimes wondering how this isn't a colorway of that same model we've seen expressed in umpteenth iterations. But that's neither here nor there.
And David, how are you?
I'm very well. On my screen, I see a bada'a Eclipse 2 watch that looks unnervingly long and thin, and I can't take my eyes off it at this point.
It's quite long, but I briefly saw this while in Geneva. They were at Beau Rivage. It wears quite well on quite a few different wrist sizes. I've got small wrists. Sean was also in the meeting with me, as was Neil. We all have very different wrist sizes, but it wears quite well. It's a pretty interesting piece and not very expensive. They do some really cool stuff. This is certainly one of the more elevated pieces they do, but I mean, they've got some very nice, simple, Swiss quartz things that are like $600 or $700 thereabouts. But this is obviously on the higher end side of it, but it's quite nice. It looks long, but it's got those very thick modern lugs, and since there's no crown or anything on the 3 o'clock or 9 o'clock side, it really kind of accentuates that profile. But those of you who've seen a G-Shock on my wrist and look at the photos, Mike wrote it up, but that's on my wrist. You can tell it's fairly compact overall.
Okay, let's be honest here. It's sort of a good and bad news situation. The lugs are probably like 50% of the watch. Okay, so it's like the baby head version of lugs. Like they're just huge, right?
You gotta love lugs.
But the watch overall is small. So it's like, what, 37 millimeters? So it's like, even though they are massive lugs proportionally, it's still not that big of a watch.
It's like It's like a 1990s Roger Dubuis with the lugs of a 2022 Roger Dubuis, basically.
It really is like they took big lugs off of like a sport watch and then attached it to like a case. But the case has some interesting geometry. They curve downward quite a bit. I actually liked it quite a bit. This was the first time I'd had an opportunity to see any of the brand's watches in person. But all in all, it's I want to see more. And they also have a sibling company which makes more modern space agey looking stuff, but all very cool things.
I feel like their lugs are very honest because we place so much design emphasis on lugs when we choose watches, yet brands often have them as sort of a second thought. Once in a while, there's some flaring to them if the watch costs like over 50 grand. And here, bada'a just is like, you know what? We know people like lugs. So yeah, that's basically what you're going to see. Case, yeah, sort of. But look at those lugs. It's like, at first, it's like weird looking, but it's just honest because it's like, that's almost what our eyes want to see. It's almost like AI came up with like a design. It's like, show me the things about the watch we look at the most.
What I want is the next version that has a huge case and tiny lugs.
Just all middle case, just nothing but middle case.
Yeah, but that's like a Panerai. Like, we've seen that.
That's true. That's true. 45 millimeters on wire lugs is basically just, at that point, the lugs are a formality.
Yeah, so this is the hip modern way, all lugs. I think of like the cowboy books with like giant spurs. Like that's what this is. Just like the massive spurs. That's what these lugs are.
It's the anti-Panerai. Instead of having a giant sticky Addy crown guard thing on the case, there's like nothing on the side of the case. The crown's at 6 o'clock.
What is the name of this model? Eclipse 2? Was there an Eclipse 1?
Yeah, there was an Eclipse 1. I'm not sure if it's still in production. It's not quite as elaborate as the Eclipse 2.
What is the movement here? Does it jump? That's what I want to know. I just care if it jumps.
We don't have a photo of the movement because the movement that was in it wasn't the finalized one when we saw the production.
Yeah, what is this?
Mike appears to have stuck a case back photo over a grayed out image that I had taken. But it's an elaborate rotor on what I think it's like a SW300 base or what is this here? Yeah. SW300 base. It's quite nice though. You know, it's
so we don't remember if it jumps or not.
For the hours, I mean,
it has to.
The hours jump. Yeah, the hours certainly jump. It's
okay.
It's not the sliding hour complication of the original Gerald Genta thing that we spoke about.
It's a good thing. It's just funny how now we're like, 4,000 Swiss francs. There you go. Perfect. But I agree. It feels fair for what you're getting. It's not like a silly thing. Like, this is a very bespoke product, different case, different dial, different module for the movement. Like, I don't feel that this is overpriced. Does this brand have legs? Do we want to see more bada'as?
I definitely want to see. Yeah, I definitely want to see more bada'as. This brand and their sibling brand are both, equally promising. They come
What's
from
the sibling brand? You're being really discreet about it.
I can go find it as on a photo of my phone.
Okay, we don't know. Okay.
It's lovely. It's kind of like I consider it like a budget work almost, but they're from the Middle East and they're very value packed. But like you said, they feel fair, and bada'a spans a pretty wide range. So this is like $4,000, but this is obviously on the higher end side of what they do. If you want to go towards the more affordable side of things, sub $1,000 gets you again, like Swiss quartz, nothing special from a movement standpoint, but it is a very well considered design. So this again, first time I saw these watches in person, first time I've interacted with the brand, but overall looks quite promising, and I want to see more from them, especially since they do kind of play in that 500 to 5,000 range, which is fairly broad these days.
I like that there's what appears to be an original font for the hour marker there.
Oh, I found a photo. Oh no. Okay.
That's
Magnam.
What?
Magnam, the sibling company. MAGHNAM. Cool stuff. This is the most low-tech way. It's a photo on my phone, but like, oh God. Like, yeah, kind of work.
That's a proper screen share.
Yeah.
If there ever was one.
Yeah, screen share from 97. Yeah. That's kind of like a work.
Don't let TikTok win.
Yeah, you are 100 sort of vibe. It's a cool piece. I like these brands a lot. I'm looking forward to seeing more of their watches.
Okay, cool. Let's move on to this Tissot, which to me is the first, I guess, non-sport watch version of the new solar Tissots that we're seeing that has the in-house made technology. They made a big deal over their T-Touch with the photovoltaic cell. Then of course there was we knew that they were making these. Now there's the PRC 100 Solar, which is I guess we'll call it a dress watch, kind of a sport elegant dress watch, but that has that solar. We knew this was coming, but I think we can officially say that in addition to Japanese solar, Swiss-made solar is a thing, and it doesn't need to be too expensive. I'm going to shoot down to the price here. I'm trying to see what this is. I have a guess. Okay, $525. This is a little bit more than I thought it was going to be. Sean was the one that reviewed this. I imagine there's different colors and things like that. How competitive are these compared to, maybe a Citizen EcoDrive?
Well, so I think the big difference between this and like an EcoDrive is that with an EcoDrive movement in any of their configurations, they're always the solar photovoltaic cells are mounted on the movement itself, and it's either transparent dial sections. Some of the movements like that they sell through Miyota end up having a photovoltaics in the rehaut, and they use a transparent kind of chapter ring. This is a solid dial, and the photovoltaic cells are embedded in the sapphire crystal. So if you look at them from like a really steep angle, just the right light, you can kind of see this fine silvery net material running through the crystal.
Oh, that's in the crystal.
Yeah. So it's
cool.
What this unlocks is a huge possibility to do some really elaborate, fully traditional, solid dials or stone dials. Do whatever you want at this point. It's just a dial, and the solar cell is confined to the crystal. Now, this obviously the pros are it opens the doors for dial treatments galore, which I wish this collection sort of flexed that more. This is a pretty standard looking dial that you can totally do in a transparent fashion, and Citizen does it very, very well. But you could do something really textured or something that you could not do that really showcased the technology. But from a long-term standpoint, if you ever screw up the crystal, I imagine this is not as simple as taking it to your local watchmaker and having them pop in a new one of a, similar size. I imagine this is factory service only and probably a much more extensive repair.
Good point.
It's a very interesting approach for that. I haven't seen this in person. I can talk to Sean, of course, has. In the photography, you can notice that there is something going on there. I didn't know if it was like blur or something like that, but yeah, it's sort of this netting. So what you're saying is that somehow the current, which is going to the crystal, is distributed to the edge where it's moved to something else. I don't really necessarily know how if that's where the actual current is generated, but it moves to the edge there and then moves over to the battery. Is that how you're saying it works, Ripley?
Possibly, or whatever those little silver lines, you can kind of see it in one of the photos if you go scroll through it and zoom in. But maybe the lines themselves are able to generate enough power that through whatever capacitors or what have you that they've got embedded in the case, that it's able to use that to charge the movement. But the solar performance is quite. I remember Sean mentioning that it's quite impressive, given that this isn't like a big solar panel or anything like that.
Tissot claims that with 10 minutes. You'll get 24 hours worth of running, which I don't know. Maybe that's good.
And then what's the full runtime when it's fully charged?
14 months. And remember, Citizen recently came out with the EcoDrive 365, which, as the name implies, was proudly having a year of battery life. This is a little bit more than even that. And I guess that means the standard EcoDrives are significantly less, maybe 6 months or so.
The entry-level Eco Drives are 6 months. They're rolling out the 12 months in a lot of them. And then some of the more advanced Eco Drive calibers can go like 5 years, but, those have a power save mode. And you typically find them either in like the higher level Pro Masters that have multifunctions or, just some of the higher end products like, the Citizen pieces. Again, performance specs are cool. I'd love to see this technology flushed out a bit more, learn more about kind of how they're doing it. Are the photovoltaics the actual lines that you see in the crystal? Are they basically transferring current to something that's, under the bezel? I'm not entirely sure, but I think not being confined to having a quasi-transparent dial does open the doors a bit in terms of what a solar-powered watch can look like. And I also like seeing Switzerland go a different way than Japan, which has historically, done a transparent or dial or having cutouts in the dial or something like that.
There's a lot of interesting stuff that Tissot could do here, and I'm really glad that the Swiss have jumped on solar in a pretty big way, especially since they're making it, in Switzerland at the Swatch Group. I think that they're going to have to play with the creativity here. But again, there's going to be years of potential here. David, are you ready to wear a Tissot Solar or not quite yet?
I'm intrigued by solar. If you look at it that way, if somebody would have shown me this 20 years, 30 years ago, or even longer than that, if you had shown this to an engineer in the 1950s or in the 70s when someone was working on at the 7750 and you said, you would have said, look, we will make a crystal that is transparent, but it gathers energy from light, and then it charges a battery, and it's super accurate, and then it has 14 months of autonomy. They would have said, no way, it's science fiction. So in that way, I find these mesmerizing and amazing, not just this, but almost any solar watch out there today. So I'm intrigued by it, but for me, it's just difficult to get attached to a watch that has a ticking second hand. But that's just me. So maybe if they could figure it out to have like a gliding hand, I would be all over this one.
You got tick prejudice?
What about deadbeat seconds, David?
Sure
like,
do.
you're just going to discard that entire complication?
No. Quite like that, actually.
You'd
But
rather
it's
have no
difficult
seconds
because it's
hand at all.
mechanical.
You like quartz with just an hour and minute hand. David's fine with that.
Yeah, actually I am.
I don't know why some brands don't make it less of a seconds hand that ticks and find a different way to like show that the watch is running, or find some way to kind of roughly approximate, an elapsed minute, but not
Any
have
suggestions?
I mean, I've only seen fun ones, where they put some they take the seconds hand off entirely and put like a, smiley face or a radioactive symbol or something like that. But other brands have sort of done it with the small seconds where it's an interesting little motif turning in the subdial or something like that. But I don't know. I'm sure there's some more creative way, because it is one of those things where it doesn't matter how much cool tech is powering the watch. At a quick glance, this looks like any standard battery-powered quartz piece. Granted, 5 minutes into talking to the person who's wearing it about the solar tech, it's a significantly more interesting offering. But I wish there was something to sort of separate it visually in the same way that you see a sweeping seconds hand on a mechanical watch. That at least there's something interesting there, or at the very, very least a mecha quartz movement.
Who needs to go solar is Movado, the museum dial watch.
That would be pretty cool. Or just double
Because it
the rate of
represents the sun.
Yeah, exactly. Or they could use whatever part of the dial, maybe the small one, the large one, whatever.
So what, you want a
live with,
faster seconds hand?
Yeah, even twice a second or 4 times. And they're like, oh, but it's energy consuming. You have a watch that runs for 14 months. Have it run for 2 months. Who cares? I'm not in a cave for 2 months. If it can recharge, then that's all good. And it's same with G-Shock. Sometimes you're like, oh, well, you can have the dial light up for 1 second or 3 seconds. And because otherwise it consumes too much battery. I don't care. I would even mind if it depleted the battery completely. Just have it glow for 15 seconds. I find it fun. Just let me choose whatever I want and deplete the battery.
Is this the same person who hates the idea of charging a watch as well?
Yeah, but these are solar, man. So that they can just charge themselves.
So you want a watch that you can play with,
amazing.
Constantly play with, and drain all the battery, but you never want to have to charge it, even though you're somehow okay with 2 months of battery life.
Well, I do see David's point. If you technically have, obviously a solar-powered movement has to be a little bit more conservative with how it does things so it can, keep those average autonomy specs up. But if you technically have an unlimited power source, unlock, the Bugatti, have the second key in there to, take full advantage of it. It's not for all-day use and responsibility, but, give me the 30-second full illumination so I can, find my keys in the dark type of thing.
Exactly. What if it takes off maybe 6 weeks of battery life out of those 14 months? And I get bored by it, at that point. So it's okay. We could just be a little bit more playful here.
Yeah, it's like hitting the NOS. You can only do it a couple times. You got a finite bottle, but it when you want it, it's there.
I'm impressed where Tissot has started with this. I agree that there's a lot more that they can do. There's a lot more that they can do in terms of making it a modern design. But this is trendy. And look, the PRX has been incredibly marketable for Tissot. They're the PRC is kind of biting at the tail of the PRX, really wanting to be a little bit like that. We know that the Swatch Group isn't making money selling some of the other brands. So let's just be you know what? Good job. Keep going with that. Make more. And obviously they got some fun stuff. This isn't just a gimmick. I think they'll sell a lot more of these than the T-Touch Solar, was put that way.
Agreed.
Yep.
Okay, let's move on to what else do we want to talk about this week? We have all kinds of stuff. We have some things that are news, but that we'll talk about a little bit later on, like after we publish an article about it, for example, Casio and Crocs. I know everybody wants to talk about Casio and Crocs, but when we publish my hands-on with the G-Shock and Sponge shoes collaboration.
Do you have foot shots, ankle shot? Like, what's the proper vernacular to describe? Are you fully showcasing this product both on wrist and on leg? Like, is this a new type of photography we're going to be seeing?
I don't know if my ego can handle comments about hairy ankles. The wrist, long ago, I sort of absorbed all that. But if people start commenting on my ankles, I don't know if my delicate constitution can handle that, you know?
I give me the reason to have some ankle shots. People think my wrist is a woman's in my articles, and I played soccer for 16 years. My thin ankles are not a problem I deal with. Give me the reason to.
Oh, I don't think anyone will hate my ankles. It's not something I usually have in people's face. Like my wrist, I will lift my wrist up to close to your face to shake your hand, just like that. I just don't ever draw attention to my ankle. I'm just not sure what to make of it.
Well, it's very personal. If you do get some ankle shots or foot shots, I'm not really sure how to describe this.
It sounds like a conversation about things that excite Amish people, by the way.
If you do get these, will you film yourself doing it? Because I'm actually now trying to think how I would. It's not as simple as, hold up arm and put camera to face. There's no organic way to look at the side of your ankle and like get everything in frame unless you're a yoga master.
I mean, we would have a mirror to assist with the photography. I agree. You'll see what the shots I have are. You'll let me know. I do. Look, at least the watch is on my wrist. Speaking of a watch that probably would be a bit too fragile to put on your ankle because it's gold. David, we both of us got to see this. This is probably the most sensible new Roger Dubuis watch in ages.
Yes,
I guess we could call
easily.
it that. How would you describe it?
Yeah, it's a mix of old and new. The dial layout is rather old for Roger Dubuis. This bi-retrograde calendar. It's neat. I quite like this. I've been looking at some of the old Roger Dubuis stuff online for sale, and you could have gotten like really, really good deals a couple of years ago. They started to come up in price a little bit. I like the dial design. I like the mother of pearl details. It's just a watch that looks rather straightforward at first, but actually has a lot to offer if you dig in a little bit. So I quite like this one. Not a legibility champ, but none of the Roger Dubuis are, so that's okay. And you have some script from the Lord of the Rings.
From the from the watch, like a cry for help, like I'm trapped here. Please come get me, so they stop torturing me.
Thank God that's not a Lamborghini collab. What does it say along there?
Probably that's what it says. Yes. Not a Pirelli, not a Lambo.
Save me, and there's hilarious. A gold watch in it for you. Okay. Look, it's practical. It's an automatic movement. It's not some. What does this thing cost? Okay, that's. Look, I mean, the micro rotor skeleton on the bracelet in titanium is like $80,000.
It's a mono balancier. It's a single balance.
Yeah, which is like it's the weirdest thing, you know. It's like being like that car has 4 wheels, like because most don't. Like, it was a lot more. This one. Again, it is in gold, and I guess it would be less if it was in a titanium or something like that. But this is like almost entry level for the brand, is it not?
Yeah, I compare everything to day date. You know, this or a day date. I mean, it's not that far of price to a day date. And yes, the day date comes with a gold bracelet, etc. But this is in a different tier in terms of watches, right?
And the same complications.
Yeah, exactly.
It's shockingly tasteful for like a modern Roger Dubuis. So for the person who like plays in the space where your everyday watch is like a carbon Lamborghini thing, and you want like the pared back dress piece, but are obviously a fan of the brand and their design language, this is like a great offering. And I'm kind of, I mean, $60,000 is a lot of money, but it's a gold Roger Dubuis. I'm a little bit surprised it's not more expensive, all things considered, you know?
So here's some really nerdy things that I'm noticing for the dial here. This is really, really nerdy. First of all, we hate text on the dial, but this is a very elegant way of putting by retrograde calendar, which is the name of the watch, which is cool, but it's also merely descriptive. And if it wasn't so elegantly done, we'd hate it, but it's actually quite nice. And then in the center there, you can see that's the Poisson de Genève, the Geneva seal. This is probably the only second watch that I know of that has it on the dial as opposed to the movement. The first watch that did that, I was told, was the only one at the time that ever done it, and they need to ask special permission to put it there versus on the movement. Do you know what that first watch was that I'm thinking of that put on the dial?
That's a good question. Was it something outlandish?
A bit.
Okay. It wasn't.
It was
Who
it was Pim Koslag's brand Atelier de Monaco, which I know.
Okay.
Of course, Geneva Seal, Monaco watch, confusing. But yeah, I think he still owns it. He was working at Frederic Constant at the time. He is now basically owning and running Christian Vanderkla. So I don't know what's going on with that brand. I think it's sort of mothballed, but they were Seal of Geneva watches, and they had one where it was on the dial. Super
cool,
nerdy.
I didn't know that. That's very cool.
Yeah.
I mean, does anybody still care at the Poinçon de Genève? Or they're like, sure, whatever?
I think they should. I think it's actually, in its modern form, a particularly cool certification. The part that I don't care about is the whole Geneva thing. I feel like it's very weird to base quality on exactly where it was made. It's like, oh, it wasn't built in this area, well, it can't get the seal. I mean, like, I get it's in the name, but it just seems very arbitrary. Like, oh, just by virtue of being here. But it's not just performance, it's also aesthetics. It's certain types of environmental resistance and things like that. Like, it's a very solid rating. Like, if I had a watch that had the seal of Geneva, I'd be like, yeah, this is probably a pretty kick-ass movement and watch.
Yeah, I mean, I think it has more weight than people assign it credit. You know, people fetishize mil spec or ISO standards, and that really more, both of those designations really more allude to meeting the minimum criteria for something that can either be considered X label, like dive watch, water resistant, shock resistant, or of whatever the military had needed for this application. It doesn't need to excel in it; it just needs to meet it. Geneva Seal, it kind of speaks to just the general quality, attention to detail, finishing of the piece. But I also don't think it's not even like as understood in the same way like COSC standards are. So it's like, people kind of gloss over it as, oh, it's nice and high quality. Well, you'd expect that from a watch like this, but I don't think people often think about it or kind of dissect all of what goes into it when a timepiece actually bears that hallmark.
Yeah, I mean, like David and I, we've written about it multiple times. We've had to learn. I imagine that probably at least half the aBlogtoWatch team could not describe what goes into the majority of the Seal of Geneva, certification. And the average consumer out there, I mean, I don't think most of them even know what the seal is, let alone understands, what goes into it. Oh, and by the way, I had a major watch nerd bucket list moment yesterday because I, on the Superlative podcast, interviewed the CEO of Kosk, which is the first time I've actually, cool. Yeah. People don't realize like Kosk isn't exactly at least like accessible traditionally. Like you didn't meet Kosk folks anywhere. Like once in a while you drive by in Geneva, like close to Rolex, so like, oh, that's where Kosk is. And then that was it. But now Kosk wants to be cool and social. So I interviewed the CEO and it was, oh my God, nerdy, talking about the nuanced details of the testing and things like that. But, they're very specifically not about most of the things that the Geneva Seal is about in terms of the decoration and style and a lot of things like that. But the one thing that I learned from the Kosk interview, which was interesting, is how most of their testing is just the watch movement, right? And not the case and stuff like that. Apparently for more than 30 years, they've offered the full testing, right? Like you could get the whole thing with the case and all that. Just no one gets it. Maybe they don't know about it, but he's like, yeah, we've offered that forever. Right? We don't know why people haven't used that service more.
That's hilarious. And
so
now
yeah,
everyone's posing as though they had invented it, like Rolex and Tag. Oh, we're testing the case-up watch. Good. I mean, Kosk apparently, offered it all along. That's interesting.
And then, I was interested to see what his reaction was. It was like, so what do you think about it when a company self-certifies, like Patek Philippe or Rolex for that matter? And he's like, he can't talk bad about his clients, right? Because even but you could see on his face, like the small amusement of like how that completely goes, it's beside the point. With that said, the whole reason that Kosk even exists in the first place to be this third-party validator that your watch is going to tell time. Like, that's a vestige of the past. So we love it, but I don't want anyone to realize very quickly that COSC isn't totally necessary. Right, we do want our movements to operate, but like it's not like a life or death thing. Not like, you know, you're a pilot or you're like some type of emergency professional. It's like my watch wasn't in time and people died. Like that issue doesn't really happen anymore. So it's kind of like vestigial in the truest of sense, but we don't want to lose COSC ever. And he said something interesting. He said 40% of Swiss-made watches undergo COSC certification. He wanted it to be more, but that sounds high to me. I was like, wow. Did you think 40% Swiss-made watches are COSC certified?
That's super high.
I could see that because COSC certification is a prerequisite for other certifications. So like Tudor's in-house certification and Rolex's first requires that the watches be COSC certified, and that also applies to Metis. So I could actually see that because, you know, for all of these, anything with the chronometer label, even if it has another certification in many instances, ultimately still has a COSC certified movement. So I think that's, I could see that. It's higher than I would have ever imagined, but when you kind of start to peel it back, it seems a lot more plausible than it does at first glance.
I just realized it's... Oh, go ahead, David.
So I think it's 40% of luxury watches. It can be all Swiss made because a bunch of them are swatches and stuff. I'm looking at the statistics from the FHS, and 2024 Switzerland exported 15.3 million watches.
I think he meant mechanical ones.
Mechanical, I can't imagine there because they do offer. Yeah, they do offer certification for quartz, but it's like when you get into like that thermocompensated Breitling stuff.
You know what he said to me actually, and maybe I didn't ask enough, but he seemed to claim that the even though they do test quartz watches, there's no different standard for them. It's the same COSC standard. -4 to +6 a day? Yeah.
Atrocious. No. Like, what is even the point at that? Like,
it can be right. Did they check if there's a battery in it?
Like, you could take the cheapest quartz movement, smash it with a hammer, freeze it in a lake. It's gonna keep -4 to +6.
Look, there's temperature differences. That's part of it in the different positions.
No way.
6 seconds.
I don't think that's...
There must be a different standard.
This was the big hint. This was the big reveal from the interview, okay? And this is, and I have to be careful or else we get too watch nerdy. There's a new COSC standard coming.
Yes, there is.
Oh yeah. And this is how much in a rush there are. He's like, it'll come in 1 or 2 years. Like if your margin of error is a year, like, how ready is this thing?
Well, I guess we all have our jobs until then, so that's great.
-4
plus
12
year.
months.
Like, I know, it's like you're about as precise as your own watches that you certified. Darn.
God, imagine if everyone could have their jobs for like with like a one year error. Like, we will make a new car, maybe not, or whatever. A new processor, a new spaceship, whatever. We don't know.
I just thought it was funny that he wanted like every company needs to go through COSC that's for Switzerland. But you know the most, I don't want to contentious part of the conversation, but the one that was I think the most uncomfortable was they have this requirement that COSC only does chronometer ratings for Swiss watches. But how do you define what a Swiss watch is? Right? Because they have a list of their clients on their website. And we went through it. It was like, these are not all Swiss brands. He's like, yeah. And it was like, and Swiss made, as we know, means a lot of stuff is made outside of Switzerland. He's like, he basically said like, that's the only standard that we could figure out that anybody could agree on. But he basically admitted that Swiss made is like a wishy-washy kind of thing. But it's actually quite interesting that it really just comes down to them being prejudicial, like, yeah, you're Swiss enough, or no, you're not very Swiss. But externally, the standard is Swiss made, which we know basically means nothing.
They just go for lunch and decide.
Yeah, exactly. It's all relationships. They go to the factory and they're like, does it look Swiss enough in here? Huh?
Were we given an espresso when we sat down?
Is there no decoration? Okay, good. No decoration. This is definitely Swiss.
They have the Department of Austerity that goes and checks everything.
Is this in a square enough building? Is your factory a complete cube?
Would this work in Yugoslavia? Yes. Okay, then that's great.
Okay, so yeah, I just realized that, again, if we talk too much about watch certification programs, we will quickly alienate 97% of the audience, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah,
but attract 40% of the movements. But I actually did this math, and it's like still almost 2.2 million mechanical movements, and I still think that's a bit too high. But it would be interesting to know if they actually
So
do
wait,
that.
That's
2.2.
about what they
Wow.
claim.
Okay, so about 1.2, 1.3 of that is coming directly from Rolex, like down the road.
Yes.
So
Right.
we can, and then I don't know what Tudor's output is, but like we're closing this gap pretty
100,000.
fast. Yeah.
Breitling is a big part of it.
Yeah, everyone from Breitling, yeah.
Yeah, and that's apparently that's most of it.
Well, and then there's a lot of like, all the brands
Some
that
Omega.
like the micros. Yeah, all the micro. Oh, yeah, everything that's Metis would then also, that would be a prerequisite for that. So, yeah, I guess it adds up pretty quick. And then there's all the micros.
It sounds like 6 brands probably represent the majority of the inventory.
And I think, well, I mean, is this complete watches? Because I know, if Solita or whatever, they offer chronometer grade movements to their clients. And, if, they might just have a massive batch of 200,000 SW300s that are set to be chronometer grade. And then those get doled out, piecemeal
It's never
to the end
it's
users.
never complete watches. It's always just movements. So absolutely, ETA used to offer and still offers COSC grade, COSC certified movements of their top grade, level movements. So absolutely, movement manufacturers, Celita and ETA will be there, and maybe some others as well.
So we're back, everyone. My internet unceremoniously cut out while I was waxing poetic about this blue G-Shock. I called it the upper middle class of G-Shocks, and apparently that was enough for the internet to die on me.
We heard none of that. Actually, I heard none of that.
Yeah, we heard none of
that. I know.
Introduce the
that
watch
was after.
first. Yeah, let's introduce the watch.
So this is the Casio G-Shock. This is the MTG, which is the one rung under the MRG. B4000, which follows up on the B3000, which was oddly the successor to the B2000, and before that the B1000. It's funny how that goes. This watch is, oh, yes, of course. That would be helpful as I return. Now here we are. Now I saw a prototype of this watch. It is again, it's the highest version of their second top tier thing, so it's the best of that class. It's supposed to be quite thin. The blue is a little bit novel. About $1,200 for the blue version. There's another one here. David, you mentioned in your write-up here that there's something related to AI generation. What is that? Is that just a marketing story? Did computer software help with something here? What is the story of the MTG B4000?
Yeah, if you scroll down a little bit, I think we can identify the parts that were designed with the help of AI. So what Casio had done was that they had input all of their data from crash testing and shock testing G-Shocks, and they would somehow. So this is the part basically, and if you scroll a little bit further down, then we have this bridge-like structure. This one. And so here you see some sort of tension between the lock piece and then this bridge that serves as the profile of the case. So this genuinely looks like a bridge to my eyes that somehow transfers shocks and load between various components of the case. So this does look like something that nobody on their own would come up with. This looks like something as convoluted as AI design stuff tends to be. So this, I can give it to them that this probably is something to do with AI. It's one complete piece, so it doesn't add right there. It tucks under this very complicated lock piece, and that's about it. I think it's cool looking. I worry that it's a bit too long and a bit too thick for what it is, but would have to put it on the wrist first to see if that is indeed the case.
What's it supposed to do? Is it a performance thing?
They don't say that it's any more G-Shock resistant or anything like that, so that's kind of lame. I wish they had explained that this is now twice as resistant or 3 times. It's not any smaller, not any lighter. It's actually bulkier and larger in every dimension than the 3000 used to be. But they, as in Casio or G-Shock, they don't say if it's any more resistant to anything.
It looks like a combination of some type of a shock absorber as well as a roll cage.
Yeah, that's a good call on it. Yes, but what are we gaining? I don't see what is it that we're gaining. It's a cool looking component, but the whole point of G-Shock is that it's
blue
not just
stripes,
for show.
David. Blue stripes.
Sold.
Yeah, that's all it took for me.
I mean, I remember being at the Hong Kong Watch and Clock Fair maybe 7-8 years ago when I first saw, maybe even more, when I first saw these layered composites, and they are carbon fiber and I think glass fiber as well. And, you know, they just create these layers and then have to mill these parts out of it. They're extremely hard. They are very difficult to work with. So it is a right old pain in the neck. But still, I don't believe that if you just took just the core of this watch and threw it around, it would, you know, suffer or destroy itself any sooner than it does with this whole contraption around it.
Now, they talk a lot here about metal injection molding, MIM as they call it, which is a way of making very precise looking parts with a lot of edges and finishes, but not having to use the traditional milling techniques. Do you think that these look more expensive than they are? I mean, that's obviously what they're going for. They're saying, hey, look, for this relatively fair price, look at all the edges and stuff like that. Does it succeed in that?
It does offer a lot of edge. That's true. For one, that's what.
A lot of edges.
I own the 3000, at the MTGB 3000, and I was looking at the case back of that, and I think it's probably made the same way. It didn't feel any different to me. So, and that was, I think, about the same cost. So this is actually, as you were saying, it's a pretty solid offering in terms of like, wow, how much G-Shock you can get for the money. It is a lot of watch, but you're just not getting the right old performance gains that, you know, G-Shock used to offer when it comes to new materials and construction techniques.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. These movements are or are not. Oh, they are the Bluetooth ones here. Okay, so this at least has that ability to connect with your smartphone, so it goes into that world. I think that that's an edge that Casio has that a company like Citizen needs to do. I've mentioned that to them. I don't know how they respond to it, but do you agree that the Bluetooth connectivity sort of makes it okay that maybe this is an intimidating looking watch? It's got a bunch of pushers on it, obviously no digital screen, a bunch of features. Because you can easily use the Casio phone app to set the calendar data, to set the alarm, second time zone, does that make this a more attractive proposition for people who are afraid to learn, you know, how to use something like this?
Yeah, I rarely say this, but people have every right and every reason to be afraid. This is a ridiculously difficult watch to set up. I have the 3000, and it's a slightly different dial layout, but essentially the same functionality with the analog hands and sub-dials and stuff. And just to input the date, the year, the date, it's impossible. It's not that it's not intuitive. You have a chance of zero, basically, to figure out what sequence of buttons to push and what you're adjusting, where the hand is pointing, and what part of the digits in the year of 2025 you are adjusting. It's a whole nonsense. Same with like setting up a basic alarm and stuff. My watch is still going off at a random time that I set up at some point, you know, months ago, and it's still beeping now because I just can't turn it off. So yes, you do have to use Bluetooth, which is annoying, but honestly, these watches are useless with those buttons completely and utterly. It's impossible to operate them. So yes, you do absolutely need the Casio Connect or whatever it's called app to adjust these settings and even to use the functions of these watches, such as an alarm or a second time zone or adjusting the date or whatever else, because otherwise there's no chance to do it right.
Go ahead, Ripley.
I was going to say, I find the fully analog G-Shocks to be significantly more daunting than the digital ones, because without a digital screen that can adapt and show different pieces of information, you're basically relegated to like referencing these hands as they shoot around the dial and indicate different things. And like, oh, signal received. Okay, you've set this. How do you know? You know, the digital screen will flash and it's like, oh, I'm adjusting that value. Obviously none of that's possible here. And the digital crown thing anything they've added only convolutes matters further. So those who have kind of familiarity with the 4-button Casio layout, this throws it all out the window because there's this other thing that's so foreign to what, you know, a digital G-Shock would have, that the only saving grace is it's dead simple to set up with your smartphone. And then the buttons almost, I mean, they have to make it serve as a standalone device that in a vacuum, you could theoretically just use the watch and set it and get all the functionality out of it. So the buttons exist, but they're basically just an interface so you can kind of quickly navigate to like stopwatch mode in the hand 0, and then you can use it. But like you can switch to the world timer mode, but if you had to reset the home time zone, again, back to the app, I don't foresee anyone doing that weeks apart and remembering how to do it without referencing a manual and then probably launching into a 15-minute process of swearing at the wristwatch.
Yeah, Casio's app thankfully does a pretty good job. And I think what I mean by that is it doesn't disconnect from the watch too often. It's easy to reconnect. I just find that as I've been experimenting with these watches more, I like the idea of my phone controlling my watch, but having that more traditional analog watch experience. I didn't know that I would like it as much. I'm not saying that I love it in a traditional smartwatch sense where there's notifications, but Casio has probably offered to me and continues to offer the best combination, hybrid experience, if you will, of having, I don't know, say the best of both worlds, but a legitimate experience that is a real traditional watch experience, but a real connected experience in just a satisfying way. So this watch does it. Also blue stripes.
I just found something hilarious. I was looking at sometimes what I do is I search for the most expensive Casio on like Chrono24 or something. And I found this one for 15,000. Then it's one of these semi-analog MRGs. And the listing requires the owner to set the time to like 2:50 and then 3:15. But the owner couldn't set the time. So he just put a screen like a digital clock on the picture, basically that says 2:50 because they couldn't set the time on the freaking G-Shock to whatever was required.
That's funny. That's funny. I look forward to seeing this one in person, and then, you know, Casio telling us that you can run over it with a Cybertruck or something. That'll be fine. Yeah. All right. What else do we want to talk about? Okay, let's talk about the new concrete watch, which apparently there's some people saying it's not concrete because it's not water in the mix. It's like glue and rocks. So if you want your luxury glue and rocks watch case, Hublot's got you covered. Again, this is very part spinny, but concrete watch case mixed with Mecha 10 movement. I don't know why it works. It's also not $100,000. This was this an accidental hit, or was there some thought behind this at Hublot?
I think it was an accidental hit. But so back to whether or not this is concrete, the water evaporates out. So whatever you're left with, like, I don't think the water plays a role in the final product of concrete.
I'm no expert.
It just makes it more porous. I'm inclined to give this to Hublot. Like, I mean, like it uses resin. They replace the water with, it uses, I guess it's not concrete. It'd be like cement powder. Mixes it with resin instead of water. Uses fiberglass instead of steel to, I guess, make it more flexy and durable. But like, since the water evaporates out of the concrete that would be put into masonry, I don't think the final product needs to have water in it, and this doesn't. So I'll give it to them. But I think it's an accidental hit. This isn't their first concrete watch. They've been doing it since 2016, and that was just the bezel on that one, mind you. I mean, yeah, this is a material they do. They like to do it to celebrate New York City with these concrete jungle ones. But I just think it works particularly well with the Mecha 10. I think this is a lot better than the Classic Fusion they did in 2020. And then they also had that Dubai one was a concrete case, but it had like a dial made from sand from the deserts of Dubai.
That was a nice one. That one looked really good.
Really handsome watch, but again, not like the urban vibes. They were more doing the tribute to the Middle East. And if I'm not mistaken, that was like a Siddiqui collab as well.
Yeah, I believe so.
Or Siddiqui exclusive. But I think this might be the best like concrete jungle Hublot that they've done so far of the three.
I mean, it satisfies the sort of gray watch thing. I think a lot of people into that, does that well. So it's not like too many different colors. That movement really shines in that way. Remind me, when we recently spoke about the square bang that had that other movement that was, you know, in my mind, like this one cut in half because it's like half the power reserve. How much was that one? Because again, this one is looking. Okay, $34,100. How much was that square bang?
A lot more, I think.
I'm checking.
Well, okay, so this is 34,000, which doesn't seem outrageous within the Hublot context. But if you compare this to other Mecha 10 models and don't count the Sapphire Master of Sapphire set, this is more expensive than everything except the solid gold versions.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah.
that precious concrete.
Precious concrete. So like if you wanted a black ceramic one or blue ceramic or titanium or whatever, they're all like 20 something thousand. So like like that's what I mean. Hublot's pricing is a random number generator. This compared to the square bang seems like it's like half the price or something. Whereas it's also the second most expensive version of the Mecha 10.
Yeah.
I mean,
The square bang was a tourbillon, so it was 105,000.
Oh, that had a tourbillon in it too?
Yeah, we were looking for it. It was difficult to spot, but it did have a tourbillon.
That was what?
Okay, it's a quarter of the price. Okay.
Oh gosh.
This is amazing for 30 something. I mean, it's ridiculously priced, but this watch is the epitome of Hublot because it's a bunch of things separately and together that nobody asked for, and that's what Hublot is about. Nobody asked for a concrete watch. Nobody asked for a 10-day sort of random looking movement. Nobody asked for this case or for this quick release nonsense or for this strap or any of these things or misaligned screws. Nobody asked for any of this. And yet you put this all together, and this is what Hublot should be about. And the moment they try and cater to wider masses and play it down, and then that's not Hublot. That's not a real thing. This is full on Hublot. I love it.
Full on Hublot. Okay, it's a hit. You know,
Yeah.
I think we all agree. This is, you know, if it was an accent, I hope they have more happy accents like this.
Bob Ross tribute. This could be a tribute to the gray market too.
Speaking of gray, the completely different end of the spectrum. I'm guessing this is it is titanium. Ripley, you had hands on with the Notice Sector 2 Field Titanium watch. That is a lot of names. I don't know what is or isn't new here. Little skeletonized dial situation going on there. Is this a baby Mecha 10?
Definitely not a baby Mecha 10. This is kind of like the field watch for the person who likes the concept of a field watch, but like doesn't want that same mil-spec design they've been making since World War II. The Sector series, this is how we get into so many names. Okay, let's unpack this. The Sector series is Notice's collection where all of the models share the same middle case design, but they have different bezels, crowns, dials, hands, case backs, crystals, and they ultimately end up being very different models that range from like three-handed explorer style things to like uber overbuilt divers and stuff. But the Sector series is their like entry-level collection. So they're all like Seiko powered. They're all like closer to the 500 price point than the $1,000 price point. This is Notice's first titanium watch. It's not the first version of the Sector Field. So a Field watch was one of the models that first introduced the Sector collection back in several years ago. Couple years ago, it was updated to become the Sector 2. Now we get the Sector 2 definition, which featured a thinner case, a little bit more elegant proportions. And now as the Sector 2 concept starts to roll its way across the Sector collection, we get the latest version of the Sector Field, so the Sector 2 Field, and it is in titanium, so it is the Sector 2 Field titanium. Really nice watch. Honestly, the slim down proportions work very nicely when you have a simple watch like a field watch. It's entirely blasted in grade 2 titanium. They specifically chose grade 2. Grade 5 would have been added to the price, and since they wanted to do a blasted case, the benefits of grade 5 are that you can high polish it. Doesn't really play a factor here. Dial's very similar to what we've seen before from the Sector series. It's got layers, but it's not a sandwich style. It's like a raised center section with cutouts, the recessed sort of ring with the hour markers, raised chapter ring. Very dynamic, but not like over elaborate or anything like that. $500, box-shaped sapphire crystal, proper time-only movement. loom, it's all printed, but it's pretty strong. And obviously, it's paired with a strap. So most sector models have bracelets, with the exception of the GMT, if I'm not mistaken, has a leather strap. This has their Tough Tech rubber hybrid leather strap thing with a titanium buckle. It's quite nice, quite comfortable. And again, $500. Pretty compelling, but not a traditional field watch, but still checks all the field watch boxes, like the full Arabic numeral hour markers, 13 to 24 scale, loomed hands, all that good stuff.
I feel like explaining the lineage of this watch is as confusing as explaining like a royal person's family. Like there's way too many, dominant forces there.
Yeah, I mean, like that's like the COSC cert explanation on this. The easy one is it's Notice's first titanium watch. It's a field watch. It takes all the latest refinements of the sector collection, and the results are a very compelling piece with a fairly cumbersome long name.
I mean, when they did that collaboration, was it with Raven? Who was it with?
Yes, Raven, the trail trekker. I
just started assuming now every single new Notice is going to throw me through some type of like, you didn't know this company? So it's like, this easily looks like it could have been one of those collaboration watches. You don't know anymore with Notice.
Yeah, they do have a really strong network of brands that they work with. But this is actually, I think, one of the models that's pretty emblematic of their design language. Granted, they make a lot of different watches, but this sort of sector field style has been used to be the backbone for certain other sector models.
It's legible.
Yeah, it's definitely legible. And for those that want a field watch, but with a little bit more modern and contemporary flair, I think it's just about as solid as anything else out there.
Well, I'll ask David this question. David, you know this. Why does somebody want a field watch?
Military time, maybe. I don't know. It looks like the only way to learn what that is, that we Europeans call time. When somebody says it's 1915 and then everyone's like, oh, that's a year. No, it's actually 7:15. But I don't know. I think we like straightforward looking, relatively clean looking watches that serve a purpose, that are not overcomplicated and look like they can go anywhere, do anything. So maybe it's a more restrained version of a dive watch, less stupid, because you wear this on land as you do most dive watches. So this is the thinking man's dive watch, I guess.
Yeah, I was going to say that's exactly it. It doesn't posture in any way or allude to some activity you may not actually engage in. Everyone can go take a hike through a field or, up a hill or whatever. But it telegraphs when you're in more formal attire that you do like to do more outdoorsy stuff. But then at the same time, it's casual enough in its design that you're not wearing like a gold Patek as you go take their once a week hike up the mountain.
So it's when you're want to look stylish, but also be outside.
No, it's like it's more when you want to look like you like being outside when you're actually, probably wearing a blazer or something around the office.
Okay, so you're mostly indoors wearing a field watch, similar to you're mostly dry when you're wearing a dive watch.
I mean, in today's era, you ask the guy who's living in the bush, he has like a Casio, Pathfinder or something like that, or a Garmin, and he needs the backtrack thing because he needs to find his way back to his campsite, and they're really convenient for that.
I just feel that the most associated job with this is infantry soldier, which is the guy who gets shot at or drone bombed or whatever. It's just not very glamorous these days, right? So I'm just looking for more glamorous things to. For me, when I hear field watch, I hear hike or yard work, which everybody wants to wear a cool watch when they're doing yard work. That is a thing, and you can't wear your really nice watch, but you don't want to wear just a nothing watch.
Yeah, I think this is right up there for that. I mean, it looks fun. It's probably light and comfy, so I quite like this one actually. As this field watch
the
is
Garden Master could be a really compelling line.
I mean, those basically are John Deere tractor colors, right?
Yes.
Actually, yes. A collab is about to happen. Just don't give them ideas.
I told you, I did not think this is just a Notice original, okay? I feel like there's some other forces at play here. Okay, the Notice sector and all that taxonomy information that Ripley so eloquently explained about this. Looking at a sponsored post on aBlogtoWatch, we were asked to help tell people about the 1931 Polo Club, which believe it or not, is a Jaeger-LeCoultre event. That sounds very LA, actually. It is in LA. It's a traveling exhibition. And the watch that we have featured here, boy, that is a beauty. Ripley, what is that timepiece? That is one hell of a reverso.
Yes, it is. I would love to tell you what it is. I imagine it has multiple complications, including a chronograph. But what else might be there on the other face? I have no idea. Far removed from the origins of polo, I can assure you. Oh, Lord, no, it's a minute repeater.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, that's what we have there. I see some gongs on the bottom.
Polo. That makes total sense.
Well, yeah, you don't want to look down at it because it's flipped over. Because you don't want to, and maybe you train the horse so that it doesn't startle the horse when it goes off.
So, okay, I mean, again, even Jaeger, is a little bit sort of like wink, wink, nod, nod when it comes to the polo connection. But they've basically, called it that. This event here, what is it that they're really showing off? Is it just historic reversos, or what's the point of this?
Yeah, I mean, they do. They've been doing this in sort of different ways, not exactly the same concept, but where they'll pull things out of their archives, sometimes make them available for sale. We've covered certain different ones in the past before. And then it kind of travels around and people can go and check them out. But, it gives you a way to interface with the brand and its catalog, past and present, in a way that's different than just like kind of going to the boutique and seeing the current production stuff. You can see some of the archive pieces and things that are kind of more tell the story of the development of the models. But, we always say for brands that like to, they shouldn't just be contacting customers to sell them a watch. They should do things to help bring them into their fold and tell the story and get people excited about them and, actually do the stuff that constitutes marketing, not just saying, hey, we have a new watch. Do you want to buy it? And this is kind of within that realm. There's certainly a commercial aspect. And I'm sure after seeing a bunch of cool reversos, you'd probably be more inclined to purchase one for yourself. But it is cool that this seems to be a more earnest way of shining a spotlight on heritage and obviously the polo origins of the reverso, regardless of how, relevant those still may be, but in a more earnest manner than just making, more tribute watches that reference the first one from 1931.
It's easy for us to sometimes joke about how often Jaeger leans into the reverso right now, but I've actually started to recognize the wisdom in it. And that's that a lot of the new generation of watch lovers don't really know the reverso story and need to be reintroduced to it. We do know that a lot of exciting things are coming at Jaeger, especially since they're back under, new old ownership, new old leadership, not ownership, with Mr. Lambert probably returning to some of the more interesting sports watches and complicated watches. So they're educating the new audience today about the reverso. They're going to build on top of that. And we've always had a special place in our heart for the brand. It's sort of an inventor's brand, an engineering brand. And I think what they're trying to do is lean into the fact that the reverso, as old of a story as for us, was one of those first watches. I mean, just look here at some of the pictures that we have here of the schematics, the drawings. I mean, this was a case that was invented by them, and I've actually been to the factory, see them make it. They make that case. It's not a supplier that does it. They make the reverso cases themselves. That's truly an in-house thing, and that makes the brand a little bit different than others. A la Gonzona, for example, they don't make cases, they make movements, but they don't make other parts of the watch. So I think it's actually a very interesting thing for Jaeger to do this, especially for that new generation that missed out on that story that some of the aBlogtoWatch folks have known for a while now. Does that make you guys agree?
Yeah, this is very cool to see all these blueprints and engineering drawings and maybe early prototypes and stuff. Yeah, I think there's a lot to unpack in the world of reverso, and as old the story is for us, and in the same way as ridiculous as the concept is to wear a watch while playing polo, in the world of watches, it's very rare to have something that you can flip around and enjoy both sides of the same watch. And I think Jaeger has done some amazing designs with the reverso, and you can get really creative, and not just you, but the engineers as well. So if they can dig into that a little bit, showcase it a little bit, then I think that's good. We only have one reverso in the world of watches today, in the 90s and 2000s, and much earlier on, we saw some others play around with the concept and create workarounds around the patent and Jaegger's solution. But as of today, I don't think we have anything else other than the reverso that flips around on your wrist as you're wearing it at this price point, or even any other. Am I right in saying that?
Cartier tried to come out with theirs again. How much was their crazy thing?
Oh, the Basculante or whatever with that.
I don't remember the name of it. They have their spinny
vertically
thing.
Flipping one is. Quite a bit more expensive than an entry-level reverso. I mean, I think it's, as much as we sort of roll our eyes when brands keep thumping the same drum and try to, reinforce the icon status of their flagship models, it is an important part of what it is to be a well-known mainstream brand. Rolex is never going to stop talking about the Submariner, and nor should they. It's also important for them to do other stuff and continue to innovate, and that's how you get things like the Land Dweller. But it's important for a brand not to just rest on their laurels and just become the Royal Oak. It's important to kind of do other things, and JLC does this. They've got the duo face stuff and the duometers things, which are all very different and sort of take it into their catalog in different directions that aren't just the reverso. But the reverso is their most famous model. It is the one that would be celebrated as their Royal Oak. And so alongside creating really cool duometer pieces that we can also talk about and the crazy high complication stuff, I think it's part of just the general brand building and continuing to create new enthusiasts and collectors that you also still have to talk about your icons and remind people where these things sort of came from. So it makes sense. It might not be the theme we want to hear about as people who write about watches for a living, but in terms of garnering new collectors and getting people excited about the brand on a more mainstream level, this is probably the smartest thing they could do, and something that is, people know what polo is. We don't need to explain the nuances of saturation diving or anything like that.
I love these drawings, by the way. These are so much fun.
They're so cool.
Let's finish today by looking at our flyback article, where we have some of the not necessarily less important, but just things we didn't devote entire articles to. New colors for the Leica watches. Quite a fan of the ZM11 and 12 Leica watches. This is the ZM1 and 2. A little bit stranger, but new colors. Okay, cool stuff. Yeah, that's the Monceau. That's you know what? I feel like it worked for Omega on their, what was the watch that did something like this? It was their ladies' watch, right? Was it the Ladymatic? Is that where this texture came from originally?
They did have a wavy dial or something like this, right? Is that what you mean?
Yeah. I just find it funny. It's like, now 15 years later, it's showing up on a micro brand dial. Just goes to show that design never dies.
What's the price on this?
$745.
Yeah, and the case and the bracelet are like total like a Zenith Defy, basically, if you look at it.
Look, you know what?
This is what the world of micro brands has become. It's very successful at it, and offering very familiar.
I'm happy this is here because you're just getting into watches. You see that Zenith Defy, and you know what? I'm sorry, you're just getting into watch. You have no business spending more than $10,000 if you don't know what you're doing. Something like this is a lot smarter of a way to, your first dozen watches should be stuff like this.
Absolutely.
I also kind of like these affordable sort of mashups, if you will, where it's like a Zenith Defy case, but with sort of like a textured dial, which has like an Oyster Perpetual sort of layout, but we've given a 6 o'clock Omega kind of date and an Omega dial texture. It kind of reminds me of like the early 2000s era of mashups, where it's like, this isn't musical genius. This is a guy who dropped some known lyrics over a track we all know, and it was a fun song. But like, that hits when it comes on at the party, and like for like $745 or whatever. This is a fun way to enjoy this style without spending like as much as you might spend on like a used automobile.
Here's what I want to know. At what point will we no longer be able to distinguish the designs that came from people versus AI just doing, as you said, mashups? Because AI is a mashup machine. It's arguably extremely good at doing mashups. And a lot of these successful micro brand designs are essentially that, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little more of this, and boom, this is successful. AI could just go through tons and tons of permutations, and a human being who runs the brand could be like, "Ah, that's the one I like." So I guess how close are we to these barely needing a human element?
Probably fairly close, but I think where the human element comes in isn't necessarily just the visual aspect of it. I think AI can probably get pretty close to there. But when it comes down to the ergonomics and the fine profiles and like how is it going to sit on the wrist and like are we going to curve the lugs down this much more? What angle of camber are we going to use on the crystal? A lot of that are things where I think it really still exists in the physical domain. So while AI might get you 85% of the way there, it could be 3D printed and it's absolutely a train wreck in the hand, and it needs further refinement. That's something that can only be done by someone with a physical wrist who puts it on and says, yep, that wears terribly, let's change these things accordingly.
Ripley, fair enough, but I think you'll admit that most of these watches are sold sight unseen. They're a design that you like and you buy on the internet. Chances are you haven't had a chance to see someone wearing it in public or a store to view it in. So while I agree completely that AI is not going to have an advantage over humans when it comes to ergonomics, how important is that in an era where watches like this, again, are sold through an internet experience primarily?
It may not deter the initial sale, but if if it's a totally AI designed thing that was never designed in the prototyping stage to be on a human's wrist and it therefore wears uncomfortably and unergonomically, I can't imagine the people who bought it the first time around because they just like the design are then going to start collecting that brand's pieces. So I think it's up to the brand that, however they choose to use AI, that the first and foremost is that the physical product they put forward with whoever made it or designed it or whatever made it or designed it is still a good product. It needs to be comfortable on the wrist. It needs to look good, and check all the other boxes from a functionality and aesthetic standpoint. So, I think it could be the future of the cash grab Kickstarter brands where it's minimal effort and let's just hope we hit our funding goal. But I think for the brands that are going to endure and garner audiences and make worthwhile products, I think it is such a physical product. I don't ever see AI completely taking over. So long as people are actually wearing them on their wrists.
And you'll also need suppliers who can deliver on those designs.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't have AI run factories. We're nowhere near that. David's absolutely right. Speaking of AI, no, I don't know. This Norqain has a new watch with their ambassador, Dean Schneider. This is like the third, maybe fourth of the Wild One skeleton. Actually, they weren't all skeletons, but they were all wild ones. Hakuna Mipaka. I met Dean. He's a nice guy. He saves the lions. Ripley, David, is this strap supposed to be like a lion repellent? If they see it, they run away? What's going on here?
I couldn't tell you. They've done a lot of these for what is ultimately kind of like a rather strange part of their portfolio of ambassadors and whatnot. This seems like kind of one of those things where they might have made a watch or two and never done it again. But it's like Hublot with the rhinos, where they how many Hublot rhino watches are there? It's more than you think. How many Norqain Hakuna Mipaka
those
watches?
African wildlife charity things. It's a funny business.
Something's going on there. They just like these Swiss brands. They just really like these African wildlife.
Spokesperson, a lot of charisma going on. Is anyone saving these lions and rhinos? I don't know.
But yeah, this is there's a lot of these. It kind of looks like a generic-ish African themed pattern on the strap, something that you might see surrounding the border of a Lion King DVD set. But
it does look like a very expensive souvenir that you get at a gift store, right?
When you ball out really hard at the Disney Lion King ride gift shop.
The same store, they got the masks on the wall, maybe some traditional cloth attire, like a robe or something like that, maybe some hats. And look, the watch, it's got the whole texture on the strap.
$6,000.
Yes, a steal. 200 pieces. And again, I don't know if it repels lions or attracts them, but something with lions.
A lot with lions. I hope they keep doing this, because this is just one of those weird things where it's if they do it long enough, this is going to become a pillar of the Wild One collection, and there's just going to be scores and scores of these Hakuna Mipaka watches, and that'll just be an interesting little Easter egg years from now.
And then I guess the last one we'll talk about is the Bell & Ross BR3 Lume outline version of the diver. Attractive looking watch. I'm glad they're still making these things. Bell & Ross has had a difficult time since the pandemic. Let's be honest that it's not been easy for them, even though their watches are still good. I feel like they haven't raised their prices as many as others. I feel like these watches have been about $5,000 for, at least 5 or 6 years now. How competitive is a product like this in 2025?
That's difficult. I love the BR03. I've reviewed a couple of them over the years, and they are super well made. They're nice to wear despite the square design. I really genuinely like the BR03, and I'm still tempted to get one of them. I don't know which one, because there's actually a number of compelling and interesting design executions on it. It's not just your regular steel case with a silvery dial and then get lost. No, Bell & Ross has really been getting creative with the BR03, and right around the 5K mark, I think they do pretty well. Some of them actually are sold out. Some of these limited editions, even if they make 500 of them or more, they still sell out if they get creative. So I'm not too worried about Bell & Ross or for Bell & Ross. I think they will do well. These are, again, they're great watches. It's interesting because I feel like there are some of these brands who actually suffer the most when they are making the best products, and then when they start making crap, then they become popular. So it's just completely back to front, and that's where Bell & Ross is right now. They are not at their peak in terms of popularity, but certainly at their peak in terms of product, as far as I'm concerned.
I'm just happy when their cases don't glow in the dark.
Okay, yes, slightly bile/snot colored one. I agree with David. I think the products themselves right now are really, really nice. They have the BRX5 line with the Kanisi movements that occupies that higher tier from them. I think they're like $8,000 or $9,000 or something like that. But what I commend Bell & Ross for is like they've introduced that whole new line, which has more elaborate cases and more, manufacturer movements. But I think that where they really excel is close to this $5,000 mark. The price premiums that you see attached to like black ceramic versus steel for these kind of more entry-level models really is reasonable. And the products themselves are nice. Each kind of iteration or generation of their core models gets better and better. I think the BR03 drivers, the latest ones that they've rolled out, are fantastic. A measurable kind of update compared to the previous generation, which was already nice. But I think the only thing holding them back right now is like everyone's looking at little dress watches. There's like horribly impractical things from Cartier that are, all the hype beasts are looking at. And at a certain point, things will swing the other way and people will be interested in the burly tool watches, and the brands like Panerai and Bell & Ross will have their moments again. But I don't think any lack of interest from the public is due to poor products at all. I think they're all quite nice, and I really want a BR03 diver.
Yeah, they make a lot of good stuff, and I do agree it's a bit amusing that everyone's infatuated with like the the little watch again.
With the 0 water resistance. And
it's almost as silly as when watch sizes got too big. I agree. At some point it got too big, but now it's equally, if not more silly, to see a man looking proudly masculine wearing a clearly small watch that just a couple years ago would have been on no wrist other than a woman. Just very, very amusing. Sometimes it looks okay. I am open-minded, but it's pushed so far in one direction that it has become silly looking in a lot of the instances. But I guess those celebrity red carpets, they got to keep it interesting. One of the things I'd like to add as a summer thing, and I'm not sure the best way of doing this, but I want to have more like hosted chats, not necessarily video chats, maybe text chats or things like that. But I'm going to be thinking about a way of doing that. You as the audience, if you have ideas on how you might like to have hosted chats, especially during the summer, maybe, once or twice a week, just something nice, something casual, where we can just chat with the audience and talk about what's been on your mind and what you're collecting and what you like and anything interesting. And we can answer your questions about what's going on at brands, because clearly we know. But let us know in the comments and the feedback, because, again, we'd like to have, again, especially over summer times, more interaction with you. Next week, I am going to see the relaunch, one of the relaunches of Urban Jurgensen. Why that's happening in LA is an interesting story, but it's traditionally a Danish brand from Copenhagen. It will be produced by Kari Voutilainen in Switzerland, and there's going to be some of the owners and people running it are here in Los Angeles. So that's going to be very interesting. Price is only over $100,000. But what I'm curious about, guys, is, what a company like that is going to do to be a little bit different. A lot of it's going to be familiar, like stuff people know, but it's where they try to be a little bit different to get that competitive edge, which is interesting to me. But there's going to be a lot of launches like that over the next couple of months. So guys, hopefully our beloved leader will be back next week. So wish Rick well. Anything else, guys, going on before our next show that you want to tell everyone about?
I just wish Rick a quick recovery from the West Nile virus or whatever he has in his system at the moment. It's clearly nothing fun. So get better soon, and
he's got a case of the Scotland.
Yeah.
He used a properly Scottish term to describe it, and I lurgy or something.
Yeah, we don't know what that means, but it sounds awful enough.
Sounds like a really, really cheap scotch, the one that, they don't want to sell you at the bar.
The only cure is vitamin D, and we know how that's
That's what we were saying. We're like, if you have a cough, usually a nice, warm, dry climate will help. Oh, never mind. You're right. The country you live in does not have that.
We offered him to, convalesce in Arizona, okay? Anyways.
That's true. Very generous.
We'll make sure that he stays on time. Okay, everyone. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of aBlogtoWatch Weekly. This is Ariel, Ripley, and David saying goodbye.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye-bye.